All right, everybody, huge game coming up. So why not have the biggest Auburn fan I know in Zac Blackerby join us for a little crossover episode?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. There's Zac Blackerby doing his normal calisthenics for the morning. And, Zac, when I called you the biggest Auburn fan I know, I meant that quite literally. I know a lot of short Auburn people.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I'm pretty short, too, but I've gotten bigger than I would like to be. But it is what it is.
Well, I mean, look, the way I look at the new year is you go on a diet, then you get off said diet, and you go on another diet, then you just get chunky again. That's what I do every single year, and that's what I'm going to do now because it's Super Bowl time, and it's time to eat some wings and pizza, and it's also the Iron Bowl of basketball, which is a phrase everybody says and everybody hates.
I don't love it. Yeah.
It's awful.
But I don't know what else you call it. You just call it Auburn, Alabama? Basketball? Like, or what do you does it get its own name? What would you think we should call it?
First of all, even as a guy who's in the iron industry, I think the Iron Bowl, the moniker Iron Bowl is a little dated, right?
I disagree. I mean, I understand why you think that, but it's
I
classic.
Still like it. I'm just saying it's a little dated, but so I don't think necessarily what I'm saying is the basketball rivalry doesn't have to tie into anything with the steel industry. It just doesn't. I mean, the Iron Bowl was so much scrap iron left on the field. It's in Birmingham, the Pittsburgh of the South. The basketball one needs to be like, the Round Ball Redneck Festival. I don't know what it needs to be, but it doesn't need to be the Iron Bowl of basketball.
I'm with you. And they try to do it in other sports too. Like they try to do it with baseball and softball and gymnastics. So I'm with you. The Iron Bowl is for football. And I just don't think we've really all sat down and had a discussion of what we want to call the other sports. But man, it's crazy what this game has become across the state, though, as far as basketball. I mean, both of these programs, when you look at what they were doing now versus, a decade ago, I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And here's another thing that I hate. I've got some friends that do an Auburn show, and they do a great job with it. They're big Auburn people. And it seems like every show they're like, can you believe what Bruce Pearl has done? Can you believe it? And I'm thinking.
Which Auburn show do you like more, you think? That one or Locked On Auburn?
I will remain non-committal.
Okay.
At this time, I respect my decision. I'm decommitting from that question. No, my point is that even though what they're saying is true, I think it devalues a little bit what Bruce Pearl has done, because now Bruce Pearl has done it for a while. And so I think it's just fair to say, hey, Auburn's just pretty good now. Start believing it.
The program's
living in an alternate universe anymore. You're living in the current universe where Auburn's just pretty good. Even this year, where they've lost 4 or 5, and they can't shoot very well. I'm not throwing stones. They are not a good shooting team. They're still really good because they play so hard, and that's a moniker of a mark of a Bruce Pearl team. And meanwhile, as an Alabama fan who famously was Twitter famous for 15 minutes last year for saying I'm tired of all these new blood Auburn basketball fans. Now I've accepted that Auburn's just good in basketball.
Did Auburn basketball Twitter find you?
Oh yeah, a friend of mine posted something that I said on Locked On Bama about how I'm just tired of every Auburn fan acting like they invented basketball or something, and it was a moment of frustration and weakness that I said that.
Yeah, that was a bad call on your part.
It was a bad call on me.
Yeah,
and I said it, and I stood by it, and it was a bad call because, you know what? Why can't we all just enjoy the moment? I mean, Auburn and Alabama are both good. Let's just enjoy it. And it's funny because I think both of us have tried to na-na boo-boo, not me and you, but like Auburn fans and Alabama fans.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm better and you're better. And really, I think at this point, they're both just pretty doggone good. And everybody better accept it. Nate Oates is a good coach. Bruce Pearl's a good coach. They showed a stat last night during the Alabama game. Alabama and Auburn have been involved with either the SEC tournament championship winning it or the SEC championship winning it each of the last 4 years. I mean,
Wow.
we're just both good. And it's okay to say that now. Yeah. I mean, I'm just not going to I don't even necessarily want to get in the history, but I'll say this about the history. Alabama holds a commanding lead in the series, 94-67. But you know what the average score is? Take a guess.
Like as far as differential or total points?
You can tell me. I want you to give me one of two things. Either the total point differential in the series or what you think the average score is Alabama versus Auburn on an annual basis.
I'd guess it's a 6-ish point differential on average.
Alabama averages beating Auburn 71-70 every time they play, even though they have 94-67 advantage. And the total point differential in the series is 127 points out of 161 games.
That's amazing.
That is unbelievable. And what that tells me is, hey, we've been selling these two short for a long time, at least in regards to one another, in terms of how competitive this game is. Now, there had been some blowouts. There had been some, like back in the mid-90s, I remember it well. Alabama went to Auburn and got beat by 54. I think it was like 94-40 or something. And then in the next couple of weeks, like 2 weeks later, Alabama beat Auburn by 18 in Tuscaloosa. That's just weird. But for the most part, these games are competitive. They're fun. They mean a lot. I remember being in Beard Eves when I think it was Keenan Carpenter went off for like a bunch of Alabama ended up winning. They were coached by Wimp, but Keenan Carpenter had a huge game. This game's just always fun. Wimp Sanderson knew it. Sonny Smith knew it. Those two guys always emphasized how important this game was and what it meant to the state.
Yeah, Sonny's always been super aware, and that's why I think so many people love listening to him on the radio call now. But yeah, I mean, it's been great to see, and the stat about you talk about how either Auburn or Alabama has been involved with winning the SEC or playing for it the last 4 years is pretty. I mean, I think that's pretty. I don't know. You talk about like raising the floor of where you are. Like that's certainly how you do it. And I think you're seeing that from the Auburn perspective this year. I mean, right now, as we record this Thursday morning, Auburn's 17-7 overall and 7-4 in the conference. And over the last month, Luke, it doesn't really feel like that. And so you get different Auburn fans reacting to that in different ways. And of course, you're going to get some folks that think Bruce Pearl's time at Auburn's coming to an end. I'm like, you are ridiculous. You are crazy to think about it. And it's just been funny to see how this wave of, passion throughout the Auburn fan base, people are doing like different things with it. But it's like, no, be aware of what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think Alabama and Auburn fans ought to both be, when it comes to Bruce Pearl and say Nick Saban, I think I know we don't want to be this way because we don't think it'll happen to either one of us. But you almost have to treat these two guys kind of like Florida State treated Bobby Bowden or Penn State treated Joe Paterno, in the sense that, okay, we know you're past your time. We know you can't win it anymore. And I'm not saying Nick Saban and Bruce Pearl can't, but I'm saying when they get there, we got to go, yeah, but you earn the right to suck a little bit later on if you want to,
Yeah, I mean, I think after a certain point, coaches earn the opportunity to go out on their terms.
Exactly.
Bruce Pearl is far from that. I just want to be clear. I don't want people to misunderstand what we're saying here. Bruce Pearl is not at that point yet. Right. And I think with the talent that he's got coming in over the next 2 seasons now through the recruiting trail, Auburn's going to be just fine. But there are issues on this roster, Luke. Like let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, and I think let's get into both of those before we talk about the game in the final segment. But Zach, I mean, we're at one of those weird points where both of us do the live reads for our show. Which one of us gets the honor for FanDuel?
Hey, let's just talk about FanDuel together, because FanDuel brings everyone together. You know what I'm saying? Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You get a no sweat first bet. I know you'll be watching the Super Bowl 57. The Eagles, 1.5 point favorite over the Chiefs. Luke Robinson, what's your gut reaction on that?
Man, I'm an Eagles dude because, as you know, famous Jalen Hurts alum, Alabama alum Jalen Hurts, or maybe Jalen Hurts alum Alabama, is my quarterback. I love me some Jalen Hurts. Love me some Devontae Smith.
I've always thought Jalen is an Oklahoma quarterback. I don't know why.
FanDuel should put something up about that. And, hey, look, you're a Patriots guy, right? Do you think of Tom Brady as a Buccaneer?
No, I don't. Okay. That's a great point. Point. I think he's about to sign a 1-day contract, though. So,
and I'm happy for him, man.
Me too.
But yeah, FanDuel is the best. They have everything you want. They're into this sort of micro betting thing that everybody's into now, and I love that, where you can almost bet on a play-by-play basis. They've got everything you want at FanDuel. What a partner! And look, they are the official sports book of the NFL. And this, I don't know if you've heard, this NFL thing's taken off.
The NFL is a big deal. All right, FanDuel's got a fun line here, and then we'll jump back into our Auburn and Alabama basketball talk. The lines for the color of the first Gatorade poured on the winning coach. Yellow/green/lime is heading the way at plus 145. Orange is plus 300. Blue's plus 350. It's got to be the yellow/green/lime, right?
I think that's what they want you to think. Whenever a line is fishy, you got to go the other way. The public's going with the lime. I'm going to take the blue and see if I can really cash in.
All right, we'll see. But yeah, you can do that and bet on pretty much anything that you want regarding Super Bowl 57. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon today. All right, Luke, where you want to head next, buddy?
Well, let's talk about these two rosters for a second. And I keep up with Auburn a pretty good bit in basketball as well. I always have. I've enjoyed these. I've been not as big necessarily a basketball fan as a football fan, but I'm pretty close. I've enjoyed Alabama basketball. Back I graduated in '95. We had some pretty good teams back then. You played some pickup with Robert Ory, who famously swatted my shot onto the running track, which was above the court. So nobody's ever done that to me before, and it took some therapy, but I got over it.
Yeah, about to say, what do you go through as a man when that happens to you?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. One of his friends was playing with us, and I blocked his friend's shot. And his friend said, "Hey, Big Rob, why don't you swat his shot next time?" And I had a breakaway, finger roll, no questions asked layup. And Robert Ory, who was a rookie in the NBA at the time, or somewhere around there, he blocked it it was like from half court. He was like Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards. You just slapped it onto the running track like somebody had to throw the ball back down to us. The running track's above the basketball court, and they had to here, y'all, somehow this got up here.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I love that.
But yeah, so you were talking about the Auburn roster, and it needs some upgrades. First of all, I'm involved with the AHSA radio network, and I've seen LeBaron Philon play a few times. I'm hoping he's going to make it to the Legacy Arena in Birmingham with Baker to make it to the Final Four. And this kid's electric. I mean, this kid's a scorer. Obviously, he leads the country in scoring. I mean, I'm not breaking any news here, but he had 57 points, I think it was, against Benjamin Russell, the high school where I live in Alexander City. And he's a ton of fun to watch. Now, and they got another kid, Pettiford, I believe it is, from New Jersey, who's another guard. Yeah. And look, if Bruce Burrow could have his druthers, to steal a Gene Stallings phrase, I'd be willing to bet he'd hey, look, can you guys come play for us right this minute? Because I'm watching Auburn now, and look, KD Johnson can be a fun, fire pluggy, kind of energetic dude that gets the crowd lifted.
He certainly could be, yeah.
But more often than not, this year he's been a guy who is much more liable to shoot an air ball than to make a three-pointer, right? I mean, am I crazy?
Yeah, and you can tell it's affected his confidence. I mean, this used to be a guy that regardless of what he was shooting, he's going to shoot it 10 times a night, and that's dropped off, which is probably for the best right now based on how he's played. So I'm with you. Super electric when it comes to energetic. And look, there's been a few times in the last month or so where he's shot somewhat more efficient, and he's, scoring 10 points a little bit more consistently than he used to, but it's taking more shots for him to get there than it used to. And you hate it for him. You really hate it for him. But sadly, you're seeing that from a lot of guys. Jalen Williams is a guy that a lot of people, myself included, thought he would be kind of one of the leaders of this Auburn basketball team when it comes to scoring. Wendell Green, and then Jalen Williams, and then Janai Broome is kind of what I was thinking. And once again, he's become a little bit less efficient when it comes to scoring the basketball. So a lot of these guys, it's taking more shots for them to get to double figures. And that's just not how you win. That's just not how you win. At this time of the year, you hope to get a little bit more efficient shooting, and Auburn's not going that direction.
All right. When I watch Jalen Williams, I think he has the potential to be the best player on Auburn's team, but I also think he may be a little too nice in terms of he needs to be greedier with the ball, in my opinion.
No question. Daryl and I do a post-game show every time, and we always look at his stat line where it's like, why did he only shoot it 4 times?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I'm there with you. I'm there with you. If Jalen Williams is hot and he's shooting it 10 to 12 times a game, Auburn's probably going to win that one. Like, if we're just being honest, the way that they play defense and the way they keep everything close, with the exception of the Georgia game earlier this year, like if he can pop off and lead Auburn in scoring, Auburn's in a great spot because Wendell Green's going to do his shooting. Wendell Green's going to get to his double figures, and Jedi Broom's probably going to get there as well, the way he's been playing down the stretch. If Jalen could just take that next step and be a little bit more selfish with the basketball, Luke, I'm 100% with you.
And I'll make one more comment about Auburn's before we roll over to Alabama's. But Wendell Green is a guy, to me, I think he plays with a chip on his shoulder, which is very Bruce Pearly. I mean, he's like a perfect Bruce Pearl guard in a sense that, I mean, he gets after you and he's not going to back down from anything, which I appreciate. But he's also a guy who I think can make very deep threes. It doesn't mean he needs to take them as often as he has. That's another thing that the Texas A&M game, I don't remember exactly how much time was left. It was late in the contest. I mean, under a minute. Auburn's down 2, and he pops one from about 32 feet. And I'm thinking, why not? I know Janai Broom, I think at the time, had fouled out. But you could have gotten a much better shot. And I think he's one of those guys that's like, I want to show these guys that I'm the leader. And I appreciate that and I understand it. Yeah. At the same time, it's you got to know there's a fine line between showing what you can do and timing. And I think he needed to maybe look for a little bit of better shot there. But, we talked about Jalen Williams being greedier with the ball. And this is going to sound weird. There are times I wish Brandon Miller at Alabama were greedier. I mean, against Arkansas earlier this year, now that was a month ago. But he didn't take a shot in the first half. That shouldn't happen.
That's crazy. Yeah, Auburn went through that a little bit last year with Jabari. They were like, Jabari, why'd you shoot it 6 times tonight? Like, it's just wild to me. Then he ends up being like the second pick in the draft. Miller's probably going to be second or first pick in the draft. We'll certainly see how that plays out. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of these kids that are so like smart when it comes to the game of basketball, and they're looking around and like analytically, like it may make more sense for them to pass the ball to somebody else to shoot it that's open. But they don't account for like how stinking good they are and how much better they are than everybody else on the floor. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with Brandon Miller this year. I think it's what you saw with Jabari some last year. Jalen, I don't know what it is, because like Jalen's not significantly better than everybody else on the floor, right? But I do think he could be Auburn's best player if he kind of put it all together consistently. But we just haven't really seen that. I mean, Luke, as soon as Auburn lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament last year, Bruce Pearl started recruiting his current roster to stay. And I don't know if you remember this, but in his press conference, our season is over. And he's like, next year we're building the offense through Jalen Williams. I was like, oh, okay. And then we did a thing of like, is he actually being legitimate, or does he just not want Jalen to hit the transfer portal? Like, what's going on there? And early on, it seemed like it was legitimate. And then it's kind of dissipated over the course of SEC play. So I'm with you. I think Jalen Williams is the key. And I think he'll be the key defensively against Brandon Miller on Saturday. I think that's the matchup to watch. I really do.
And one other thing that's always undersold when it comes to sports in general, because it's sort of like, you were talking about analytics, and it always feels like you watch Lane Kiffin go for 2 all the time or go for it on 4th down. And he's like, well, the analytics say, and I'm like, yeah, but see, the analytics didn't factor in that your offensive line has 2 dudes that are hurt, and their defensive line's got NFL guys all over it. So the analytics assume everything is equal. And just like when sometimes you look at a roster, you go, man, this roster is loaded. But it's hard to factor in the chemistry. Last year's Auburn SEC championship team, they had, not only did they have 2 incredible players in Kessler and Jabari Smith, but they also had good chemistry. This year's team seems to be missing that chemistry. Now, and a case in point, they have their best shooting game of the year against Georgia at home. I mean, I think that's pretty unquestioned. I haven't looked at it, but I bet that's the most points they've scored all year. And then they have arguably their worst offensive performance against Tennessee the very next game. That's just that tells me there's a disconnect somewhere.
I also just don't know if I think it's more about Auburn just doesn't have any like elite shooters versus the chemistry. I think this team likes each other. I think they get along. I just don't think they have a guard that can really facilitate consistently. Wendell Green could do it. Zep can do it, but Zep's not he's not playing minutes at the 1, which is the weirdest thing to me, Luke. And then Wendell, I think he's a better passer than he is shooter, but he wants to be a shooter so bad. And Bruce Pearl wants him to be a shooter so bad, so he's not telling him to stop. I think it's just a bunch of little things that's kind of getting in this team's way. But it always seems to be close at the end, Luke. But this team, for whatever reason, with the exception of Florida and I guess Northwestern, they can't close. They haven't shown the ability to close whatsoever. So if this game that we're talking about on Saturday is close within 2 or 3 points with 2 or 3 minutes left to go in the game, when I watch Alabama play and it's close with 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, I'm like, Alabama's going to figure out a way to win this. And I've been right. And when I'm watching Auburn, it's like, I don't feel good about this. And sadly, most of the time I've been right. So if it's close towards the end of this game, I think you got to give Alabama the advantage just based off the way the season's gone so far.
I don't think there's any question this particular year Alabama's got the better roster. I mean, and they have, right. I mean, the best player in the SEC, if you ask me, and Brandon Miller, and they've got some. Alabama's got some dudes. I mean, last night I was even shocked watching what they were doing to Florida. I mean, Alabama's got dudes, and as an lifelong Alabama fan, I'm always waiting for that piano to fall on my head, the Acme piano, like Wile E. Coyote, like right. You're happy, this is great, this is going to be awesome, and the next thing you know, everything came crashing down. So I'm fully expecting Auburn to go nuts and have maybe their best shooting game of the year Saturday, but we'll talk about the game here in just a minute.
Yep, we'll talk about that in just a moment right here on a crossover, Locked On Bama and Locked On Auburn. Luke, I think when you look at this game on Saturday, there are so many factors off the floor that make me want to pick Auburn. I think the fact that it's college game day in Neville Arena, I think that is huge. I think that is absolutely huge. And look, home field advantage is big across the SEC, but it's really hard to win if you're not Auburn in Auburn. Like, it's just tough. It's certainly tough. And I think this team feeds off of energy so much more than any other team in the SEC. And there's going to be a lot of energy there. And then I think there's more pressure on Alabama, if I'm being 100% honest. I think there's way more pressure on Alabama to win this game on Saturday. And so I just think two of those factors, I know I'm just kind of saying it nonchalantly, but I think both of those things are a really big deal, Luke.
First of all, whenever somebody says nonchalant, I always think about my old high school basketball coach. He used to say, y'all are just nonchalanting around. And I was thinking, it's not a verb. But anyway,
that's funny.
Anyway, yeah, I think you're right. And look, personally, all right, Alabama's got a stretch now at Auburn, at Tennessee, back-to-back. I mean, it doesn't get any harder right there for Alabama. And personally, I would much rather Alabama beat Auburn. I think if we're talking about what's the best path to win the SEC championship, and you're going to go 1-1, then I think it's better for Alabama to win at Tennessee versus win at Auburn. I personally would rather win the Auburn game. I have no problem saying that. I'm not trying to discount it at all. I would much rather win the Auburn game.
Sure.
But from an SEC standpoint, I think that it's better to win the Tennessee game, obviously, even though Tennessee may be starting to show some cracks in their facade, you know.
They certainly did not look like the second best team in college basketball when Auburn played them.
Or last night when Vanderbilt popped a 3 to beat them, you know.
I missed that. We're recording this early Thursday. I totally missed that.
Okay. Oh, Vanderbilt hit a 3 with literally no time left on the clock to win the game by 1. It was unbelievable. The Buffalo Wild Wings good. I was in went nuts. Anyway, I don't know why. It was right there in Chelsea. But anyway, you know, this game is going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be, like you said, electric. And you said that Auburn feeds off the crowd basketball-wise, weren't it? Auburn feeds off the crowd more than anything in every sport. That's kind of their thing.
Yeah, we're pretty emotional.
Y'all are an emotional bunch. And I mean, look, I kind of envy it. I mean, because
it's fun. You know, it's the best. Yeah.
Look, let me tell you something. It is fun, and it is fun for Auburn fans. And there are times when, you know, Alabama fans get a little arrogant. I understand maybe a little arrogant, maybe.
Just a little, Luke. Just a little arrogance from the Bammers.
But, you know, when I'm watching us play football, I can live with that a little bit. I'm like, okay, we kind of earned this arrogance. But basketball, like last night watching the Florida game, and this is my thing with Alabama home crowds, that along the first row, second row, whatever, it's a bunch of middle-aged or older people, and their legs are crossed, and they're just golf clapping no matter what we do.
Right.
I'm like, somebody's got to stand up. This is where we got to be more like Auburn. We got to stand up.
Right.
So I know
Yeah,
that.
I mean, Bruce Pearl's even challenged like the older scholarship seat holding fans to, I mean, you can't sit there and not cheer now, which is great, which is super, super cool. And I mean, it's impossible to get a ticket now. I mean, it costs, I haven't looked, but I bet tickets for Saturday's games are like at least $500 a pop. Like it's pretty wild.
I thank 8 pound 6 ounce baby Jesus that I will be in Louisville, and I can't even make myself go to this game. I'm going to watch my daughter play in a soccer tournament this weekend, and so I'm thankful that I can't even be around to be available to go to this game, because what I would do is lay down all that money, go to it, and then we'd lose, and it would ruin my weekend. So I'm glad I'm not available to go.
Yeah, there's like standing room seats going for like $220 just to like, you don't even get a seat. You just got like get to stand at the, I mean, that's pretty crazy. So
it is, but I mean, again, it all comes full circle here with this podcast, because I think that's awesome. And again, I don't think we need to be surprised by this anymore. I think we've got.
It'll be like this next year too. The year after that. Yeah.
Because it's going to be this way. Look, Bruce Pearl is essentially in a lifetime contract with Auburn now. He's not going anywhere. No. And look, he's in a perfect spot for him. Are there better jobs? Certainly there are better jobs. But there's no better job for him personally. I
was about to say, for him, I don't know if there is a better job, Luke.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's sort of like the analytics. Yeah, they're better, more high-paying, more high-profile jobs. But for Bruce Pearl, this is it. This is nirvana.
Especially with the way he's so energetic and the fan base just feeds off of. I mean, it's a perfect marriage between Auburn and Bruce Pearl. And there's no question about it. And the talent's coming, right? I mean, with Aiden Holloway coming in, and then the two guys that we mentioned in the following year's class that committed over the last few weeks, like the talent is coming. Auburn put itself in a weird situation where we had these guards, 3 guards that we thought would be able to score at a higher and more effective clip. We added them all at the same time through the portal: Zep Jasper, Wendell Green, and Katie Johnson. And everybody's like, well, why didn't Bruce go and get a shooter? And it's like, because you got all these experienced guards coming back. Like, how do you make that sales pitch without, processing someone? This offseason, I think all that's going to change. We'll certainly see. We just have too many point guards on the roster, Luke, coming in. And, what do they do with Chance Westry and all that? It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see. It's going to be a lot of changes on the Auburn roster, I think.
It will be interesting to see at the end of the year, because I can almost guarantee you Alabama and Auburn will have people transfer. I mean, that's just the world we live in now.
Well, we haven't really seen that at Auburn yet. He's processed like one dude. And then like Devin Cambridge left because he wanted to go play with his brother or whatever. But to my understanding, like the only person that's been processed is Jamal Johnson. And at some point, like I think it's Bruce's loyalty or whatever, which is cool. I'm not questioning that at all. But like, you got to make some tough decisions about some of these guys that still have eligibility left. You got to make some really, really tough decisions.
Who was the kid that went to Baylor, though? I'm saying, like, it may not be a process thing. It may be just
Davion Mitchell. Yeah,
Davion Mitchell. Kids just want to go because they're like the grass is always greener. And Alabama and Auburn are going to have this happen.
That's true.
And I think about Auburn. I know some Auburn folks are sort of really down on Yohan Traore. Am I saying that right?
Yohan Traore? Yep.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If I remember right, he was committed to LSU. He was headed to LSU. And sort of when LSU got in trouble, he was like, I'm not going there anymore. And so it became sort of I got to go somewhere and somebody's going to take me. And of course, if a 5-star center falls in your lap, you're going to take him. Yeah. Now, and I know Auburn pursued him earlier. But what I'm saying is it didn't necessarily work out, but it wasn't like Bruce Pearl absolutely loved this guy and just fought tooth and nail to get it. He was headed to LSU, and then LSU's problems happened. And then Auburn sort of seemed like to me that he was like, okay, yeah, we'll take you because you're really good. And he just hadn't transitioned very well into the college game.
I think it's solely a transition thing. I don't think it's a talent or an ability thing. I think next year we see a lot more of him. I think we see a lot more of Chance Westry. I think they're struggling a lot with what Chance Westry is. Like, where do you put him type thing. So we all assumed he'd be a 3. And then early in the season, non-conference schedule, he's bringing the ball down the floor. We're like, what? Well, and then like he didn't look comfortable doing it either, Luke. So we'll see. They got to figure out a lot of stuff, but they certainly have the ability to do it. Luke, for all the Auburn folks listening, how can they check out everything you got going on?
just find us anywhere they find you, Zach. Go to Locked On Bama, and there Jimmy Stein and I are. And Jimmy is like the preeminent Alabama internet legend. And then I'm also there.
That's right. I've heard that Nick Saban and Nate Oates asked Jimmy before every game what the game plan should be. That's just what I've heard.
They do. Well, Jimmy and Nick Saban are about the same height, so it works out.
You can follow all of my stuff, Locked On Auburn, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, and all my written work at auburndaily.com. This has been a crossover with Locked On Auburn and Locked On